Welcome to episode number 3 of your favorite podcast on the subject of political economy, the 19th Century American System podcast. Once again, for your listening pleasure, I have for you the world leading authority on the subject of 19th century American system of political economy, Mr. Neil Martin. Mr. Neil Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you, you are in for a treat. Neil has gone into the archives and has brought a gem, quite a gem. Ezra Seaman, a seaman. And the topic today is Ezra Seaman's essays on the progress of nations. So all of you Adam Smith fans out there, all of you Karl Marx fans out there, you are about to get schooled about how economies grow and how nations make progress. Forget Das Kapital, forget Wealth of Nations. You want to listen to Ezra Seaman. So, as usual, it's going to be a two-part. Neil is going to start us off by diving into Ezra Seaman's views on the nature of man and how the nature of man impacts how society is organized. And then we'll take a break, and Neil will come back in the second part of the show and bring it on. Mr. Martin, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Over to you, sir.
Okay. So today's presentation is going to be on Ezra Champion Seaman. He was a political economist in the 19th century. He worked in government. There's little to no information about Ezra Seaman, but the bad historians, the free trade historians, know that he wrote books, right? They seem to forget that he wrote a book on political economy and that the book had over 8 editions of it. It was first published in 1846 and last published in 1868. We're going to be using the 1846 book. Now, at this time period of the United States history of 1846, we were either getting closer to the free trade Walker Tariff being passed, or it already passed, right? The United States of America has always had a tariff issue in the 19th century, and the British did the best they could with their lapdogs, the free traders, to destroy the United States of America. One of the ways in which you destroy a culture, a nation, don't give it a mission, is that you instill in the culture that they're just a beast, that they're just an animal, right? And right off the back, Ezra Seaman is talking about a high view of man and a high view of God in his political economy book. So, Victor, can you put up the second slide? I'm going to read the title of the book for people. Okay, so the short title is Ezra Seaman, Essays on the Progress of Nations in Productive Industry, Civilization, Population, and Wealth. New York, Baker and Scribner, 145 Nassau Street, 1846. The next slide, Victor. Okay, here we have the view of man. Man is born in perfect helplessness and ignorance, and yet he is required to conform to the laws of God. as unfolded in the volume of nature, and must learn them before he can do so. His whole life should therefore be a constant effort to learn these laws, to prevent the physical appetites and propensities of his nature from running to excess and vice, to resist and avoid influence of the laws of nature and to the elements and combinations of matter which are dangerous or injurious to him, to subdue and regulate properly his own appetites and passions, and to subdue the earth and convert its products into useful instruments and materials for securing and promoting his health, enjoyment, and general welfare. That's pretty deep, right? Ezra Seaman is saying mankind can subdue the earth. He is saying mankind can convert the products of the earth, use them as instruments and materials to promote the general welfare. That's a high view of man. The other view of man says man is a slave of nature. He is attracted to pleasures and he can't resist these pleasures, right? Now, if mankind cannot resist pleasures and not reach a level of independence and being interdependent on mankind and being a part of a great machine, mankind is just a beast, right? And Ezra Seaman is saying that man has to conform to the laws of God. Well, these laws of God must separate him from the beast. And if these laws of God separates him from the beast, man must have extraordinary powers, right? And the thing is that in the 1840s, this launched protectionism greatly because you had Calvin Cochran write a book on political economy. You had John Bowles, you had Frederick List, you have Henry Carey, and you have Ezra Seaman. Ezra Seaman explained the view of man the best and what it is for mankind to subdue the earth. He explicitly states it, right? So when someone says, man shall be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, and subdue it, focus on the subdue part. The subdue part means converting resources. Well, if mankind's going to convert resources, he is going to have a change of form economy. And a change of form economy is higher than a change of place economy. A change of place economy just transports raw materials and foodstuffs and manufactured goods, right? But a change of form economy is an agro-industrial economy. It's the ideal economy. Next slide, Victor. What is showing a higher form of organized economy, where men are congregated when men are congregated together by commerce, manufactures, and the mechanic arts. In cities and large towns, they see more objects to stimulate them to activity and enterprise than those who are scattered over the country as agriculturalists. Their intellectual passions are more stimulated and become stronger. And at the same time, the division of employments of being more complete. So Ezra Seaman is saying the economy that has commerce, manufactures, and the mechanic arts is a more complete economy because it has a full scale diversity of employment. Okay, and then he says, okay, so you have an agricultural economy and you have an agro-industrial economy that you see commerce, manufacturers, and the mechanic arts. The mechanic arts and manufacturers benefit agriculture. Commerce, domestic commerce benefits agriculture and manufacturing, right? And this is essential for an economy to thrive, right? So when he's talking about the farmer, the agriculturalist, right? He is saying their intellectual passions are not being stimulated. So what he is actually saying, he's saying that the agro-industrial economy with commerce, manufacturers, and the mechanic arts, it's superior than the agricultural economy. And the friends of free trade in the United States of America and the British wanted the United States of America to be an agricultural economy mostly, right? They were going to get all their they were going to get all their manufacturing goods in Europe, especially in England. This would never develop the United States of America. What we're going to focus on is how to develop the United States of America. The Progress of Nations addresses how we're going to develop the United States of America. You can go to the next slide, Victor. All right, this is a goodie. Steam, coal, and iron. Without the steam engine, coal cannot be raised in very great quantities. Without vast quantities of coal, such an immense quantity of iron cannot be made, nor could such an enormous quantity of machinery as is used in the cotton, woolen, silk, and other manufactories be kept in motion. Without a vast quantity of iron, of railroads cannot be made throughout all parts of the kingdom, nor could such an immense quantity of machinery be constructed. So Ezra Seaman is describing the industrial development, the industrial revolution of England and what it did. Without steam, without coal, without iron, there would have been no industrial revolution for England or for Europe or for the United States of America. Now, Ezra Seaman he's talking about talking about steam, right? So the steam engine will be able to get more coal from the ground than mankind doing it by manual labor, right? So there's an energy flux density in accumulating and gathering raw materials such as coal, right? And what is coal used for? He describes what coal is used for. It's used to make it, it's used to smelt iron so iron can become steel, right? This is fantastic, right? Ezra Seaman is just laying out, okay, steam, coal, and iron are important. Would a free trader tell you in a book that steam, coal, and iron was very important in the 19th century, and this allowed for England, Europe, and the United States of America to develop? I don't think they'll touch upon that part, right? They might say, oh, we're going to run out, oh, coal resources are finite. We cannot use so much coal or so much iron. Well, the thing is, they already have the intent to not be an economy that consumes raw materials for the benefit of civilization. Because if they wanted to consume raw materials for the benefit of civilization, they will be praising coal and iron. Do British free traders and socialists praise the people that made revolutionary breakthroughs in the steam engine? Do they praise the breakthroughs with coal? Do they praise the breakthroughs in iron? No, they don't, right? The Ricardo Malthusian school is not interested in that. They're interested in treating mankind as a beast, right? This whole section, steam, coal, and iron. Remember, subdue the earth. When mankind is using steam, coal, and iron, He is subduing the earth. The railroads subdue the earth. They allow for transportation of manufactured products and for passengers and for agriculture, right? Later on in the presentation, we're going to see Ezra Seaman's railroad theory. Next slide, Victor. Okay, policy and governments matter. Sparta and Athens. The mechanic arts and the manufactures have never flourished in any country without the fostering care and aid of government. Why did the ancient Spartan remain for centuries a rude, ignorant, uncultivated people without change of improvement, devoted to agriculture and the arts of war, while their neighbors, the Athenians, were making rapid strides in the mechanic arts, commerce, literature, and refinement? Was it not owing to the difference in the policy of government? Okay, Ezra Seaman hits the nail right on the coffin, right? He is talking about Sparta and Athens. Why is a political economist talking about Sparta and Athens? Sparta was a degenerate culture, while Athens had a higher culture, right? And what we have to remember, Seaman says, you never see mechanic arts and manufacturing being established without the assistance and aid of government, right? So who are these people that says no, government doesn't have to play a part in establishing industries? Do they represent Sparta or do they represent Athens? They don't represent Athens, they represent Sparta, right? So there's a difference between Sparta and Athens, and this has to be known. So if we take this bad culture of Sparta, right, and we take Athens, and we take a look at the most profound ideas and most profound things that mankind did, who can we attribute those things to, right? So we have the Erie Canal, the American system of political economy, the Industrial Revolution, the Transcontinental Railroad, the Iron and Steel Association, the American Protective Tariff League, the New Deal of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the Apollo Program, the Extraterrestrial Imperative of Kraft Erica, the International Development Bank, Fusion Magazine, which was started by Lyndon LaRouche. The International Development Bank was also an idea of Lyndon LaRouche. The Belt and Road Initiative for China, the Eurasian Land Bridge, once again, a policy of LaRouche. BRICS, which is the future for civilization, and LaRouche's 4 economic laws. We can only say Athens will emphatically, unanimously be more likely to value them than Sparta, right? Sparta failed at economic statecraft. All right. Can you go to the next slide, please, Victor? Okay. Ireland under England. The Irish enjoy free trade with England and the benefits of the English markets for their agricultural products, which are of great consequence to them, and which we do not and never can enjoy, and yet they are miserably poor. Remember how Ezra Seaman said that you get more stimulation in an economy and more enterprise with mechanic arts, commerce, and manufacturers. He is saying that the agricultural economy is backwards. There's something else the agricultural economy was, right? Ireland had a potato famine in the 1840s. They had food, they couldn't afford the food. There was no diversity of employments in Ireland. They were mostly farmers. The Act of Union in 1800 literally destroyed Ireland. That was an economic war crime. The British should have been charged for economic war crime and genocide to what they did to Ireland in the 1800s. What the British did to Ireland, people really don't understand because they don't understand economics. Victor, can you go to the next slide? Okay. Now I want people to focus on the part where it says employed in manufacturers and making machinery. We see England has 314,106 people employed in manufacturers and making machinery. That is showing a diversity of employment, right? Then we go to Ireland. Go to Ireland. Can you go to Ireland, Victor? Okay. Ireland only has people engaged in manufacturers and machinery making 25,746. Ireland has a farm population of 1.1 million people, and the British have a farm population of 980,000. The British had more population than Ireland. And we just take a look at Ireland. They have over 1 million people engaged in agriculture, but they only have 25,000 people engaged in manufacturers and machinery making. So how could the Irish actually have an independent economy? They couldn't have an independent economy. If you take a look at in retail trade and the mechanic arts as masters or workmen, England had over 960,000 people, and all the Irish had was just under 300,000, right? What these statistics are showing is that Ireland does not have a diversity of employments. It is also showing that they do not have a domestic commerce. How can Ireland have a domestic commerce when their manufacturers is so low? In order to have domestic commerce, you need both manufacturers and you need agriculture, right? What should have been shown is that they should have had mileage of railroads and mileage of canals in 1846 to see which country had the best waterways and had the most railroads. That would have been awesome to do. Okay, so as I said, this chart, it shows the diversity of employment that Ireland does not have, but the British have that. The British is saying to countries, be an agricultural economy. Look where it got Ireland. An economic war crime was committed upon them by the British. Genocide. It destroyed Irish domestic commerce and manufacturing. Millions of people fled to the United States of America. People died, millions died, maybe 1 million, I'm not sure, right? But Ireland was depopulated. And all the British could say about the turmoil Ireland was in the 1840s, oh, it's all because of overpopulation. It has nothing to do with us telling them that they don't need to be an agro-industrial economy. They can just be an agricultural economy. The British are wicked and sinister and evil. Okay, Victor. I'm finished with the first part.
There you go, folks. You heard it from the horse's mouth. Ezra Seaman. The View of Man. You heard it from Neil. Athens versus Sparta. steel, coal, and iron, the importance to building an economy, how to organize your economy, all of that is rolled into their view of man. So you want to stay tuned. We're ending 2023 on a solid note. To preview what we got coming for 2024, just some golden nuggets here and there. We're going to start weaving some of the content from the OG himself, Henry C. Carey, into the selected content that we're getting from all of these different authors and writers in this vast panoply of protectionist writers and authors, especially in the latter half of the 19th century. But Henry C. Carey was unique. He postulated certain laws, the law of distribution, the law of population, and the highest law of all, which is the unification of all natural, both physical and social law in man, the molecule of society. But more to come. We're talking about putting together a book club to make all of these authors accessible to you. Stay tuned, we've got a lot coming. Now, if Neil is ready, we're about to go to the second part of this wonderful buffet that Neil has prepared for us. It's Ezra Seaman. Ezra Seaman. The subject, again, is Seaman's essays on the progress of nations. This is putting Mr. Smith to shame, Mr. Ricardo, Mr. Malthus. And Neil, if you can tell me where we left off, I'm going to.
We are at the part where it says one of the laws of internal improvements.
Here we go. I think this is what I have.
Yeah.
So Neil is going to take this next 15 minutes and bring it home. Over to you, Neil.
Okay, so internal improvements. So Ezra Seaman wrote 4 laws on internal improvements. We are only going to cover one due to time constraints. So these internal improvement laws, free traders and socialists don't talk about internal improvement laws on how to make on how to make a railroad or a canal be productive, right? Here's what Ezra Seaman says on what has a railroad or canal productive. That the principal income of all the most profitable railroads in America, as well as in Europe, is derived from carrying passengers and the transportation of the production of mining and manufacturing industry, right? You cannot have a prosperous system of canals and railways if you do not have an economy that has commerce, manufacturers, mechanic arts, and agriculture. We call that an agro-industrial economy, right? And what we want to see with the development of railroads, right? Because how do Marxists view railroads? They say nationalized railroads. They have no concept of what it is to actually build along the railroad, like building cities and building basic economic infrastructure, building factories, things such as an economic corridor, right? They don't say that. When the free trader sees a rail line, they say that's a waste of money. How is that going to be paid for, right? That's the Thomas Jefferson disease. We don't want to pay for infrastructure. That's big government. We don't want big government involved in the economy. Well, that's foolishness, right? Ezra Seaman is laying down the principles of internal improvements, and he says the most profitable railroads in America and Europe derive their revenue from carrying passengers and the transportation of the production of mining and manufacturing industry. We don't see this from free traders. We don't see this from socialists, right? If you ask the free trader, how do you have internal improvements benefit the economy? They're not going to say you need domestic commerce. They are not going to say, okay, this railroad is just not about transportation of goods overseas and then we bring back imports. No, they should be looking at these railroads as tools of development to facilitate commerce, right? And if you facilitate commerce, you're going to need a massive field of employment. If you do not have a massive field of employment, how are you going to have domestic commerce? Domestic commerce is very important. And Ezra Seaman, all throughout the book, Ezra Seaman is saying domestic commerce is box office. You need domestic commerce. And again, what type of economy has domestic commerce? An agro-industrial economy where the manufacturers make discoveries and make the farm more productive, as in the equipment. Who was making the breakthrough discoveries in farm equipment? It wasn't free traders. It wasn't being done in Ireland when all they had was an agricultural economy. It was being done in Europe and in the United States of America, mainly in the United States of America, right? So back to this principle, profitable railroads. We can also say profitable canals because another law said that commerce facilitates the growth of manufacturers and agricultural product. Not only that, but the canal, the railroad facilitate commerce. We want an economy that facilitates domestic commerce. All right, Victor, you can go to the next slide. This is a goodie. The Erie Canal transports nearly all the merchandise consumed and the agricultural products sent to a distant market, produced by between 4 and 5 millions of inhabitants. No other work either of Europe or America does the business of numerous people. It is no wonder then that the Erie Canal is profitable when nearly all the other canals and railroads of agricultural countries are unprofitable. Ezra Seaman is saying the Erie Canal is a success. That canals and railroads that cater towards agricultural countries go nowhere, right? Where do we have Karl Marx and free traders like John Stuart Mill talking about this? They don't talk about railroad theory. They don't talk about canal theory. All the Marxists say is, oh, nationalize the railroads, nationalize the canals. What's their idea of actually developing a country? They have no idea. The free traders have no idea either. How come? What's the free traders' idea of developing a country? Buy in the cheapest market, right? The tailor is the nation. The tailor is not a nation. A tailor is a single individual who is going to buy stuff. Like he's going to buy food. He's not going to grow his own food, so he's going to buy food, right? He's not going to buy various equipment. He's not going to make various equipment. He's going to buy it, right? That's not a nation. That's a single person, right? And this mentality of the citizen should only pursue private wealth. You couldn't get the Erie Canal built if you have people thinking that I am more concerned about private wealth. And that's where we have this jabroni, the worst president of the 19th century, Thomas Jefferson, coming into play, right? Thomas Jefferson did not want to finance the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal only cost $7 million to build. By 1882, it generated over $121 million. So it paid for itself effortlessly, right? But Thomas Jefferson didn't want to finance the Erie Canal. He should be seen as a laughingstock. But it's not. It's the laughingstock. You have to take Thomas Jefferson seriously. We shouldn't take him as a laughingstock. He was un-Hamiltonian, right? And when I say un-Hamiltonian, you just outright evil. Okay. And then you have Van Buren Denslow, who's a Careyite. He called Henry Carey a doctor. He said the Erie Canal made New York the commercial metropolis of the United States of America. And Thomas Jefferson did not want to finance this project. He has to be seen as a buffoon and an evil, dumb, un-Hamiltonian person. He's not a laughingstock. He's just pure evil. All right. And so the Erie Canal, the value of the Erie Canal didn't go up because of speculation. It reached a high level because of domestic commerce, something that the free traders don't talk about. They don't say, oh, we want this road, we want this canal, we want this railroad to stimulate domestic commerce and to stimulate enterprise. They're not going to say that. Okay, Victor, next slideshow, please. Congress' duty is to regulate commerce. The business of the Hudson, Ohio, and Mississippi rivers and the great Western lakes, is it or not constitutional and expedient for the national government to improve the navigation of those lakes and rivers and make suitable harbors for the protection of commerce on the lakes? Are the great interests worthy of attention of Congress, or should they look with an eye single to the growing of cotton, tobacco, and rice, and and the the breeding of slaves? Is it not the duty of Congress to facilitate and regulate commerce among the several states? Ezra Seaman has just entered a new zone, right? Okay, so free trade historians and evil, sinister people who created the 1619 Project, all they want to do is paint the United States of America as slavery and anti-slavery. They don't even want to talk about political economy, because if they spoke about political economy, you would see how great these Americans were, instead of just judging them on, oh, slavery, anti-slavery. Oh, you had the abolitionist movements. You have Democrats who were against slavery. They were also against internal improvement projects. They were against the National Bank. They were against protectionism. They fawned at the British. They gave you the Walker Tariff. They gave you the 1857 tariff. They tried to destroy the tariff in the 1880s. They were successful in 1894 with the Wilson-Gorman Act, right? And what was the purpose of that? The purpose of that was to destroy and say we are not going with Hamilton's report on manufacturing, right? Hamilton's report on manufacturing was all about developing commerce. And how are you going to develop commerce? You needed manufacturers, right? Alexander Hamilton was also big into developing infrastructure, right? People knew that regulating commerce had to deal with building basic economic infrastructure like roads, railways, and canals. But the British lapdogs, who were created by Thomas Jefferson, figures such as Martin Van Buren and Andrew Jackson, had no commitment towards regulating commerce in the United States of America. You ask a single person in the United States of America, what is regulating commerce? They're not going to talk about, oh, Congress has to build high-speed rail. Congress has to build rail for manufacturing and passengers. They're not going to talk about Congress needs to improve the waterways. They have nothing to say. They say, oh, we need free trade. We need to develop our domestic commerce. And the only way that is going to happen is if we start regulating commerce. You regulate commerce by a protective tariff, and you also regulate commerce by facilitating commerce. And how do you facilitate commerce? Projects such as the Erie Canal and projects such as the Transcontinental Railroad, right? Okay. Another thing, Ezra Seaman is saying the United States has two options. They can either go with fully regulating commerce, or they can go with the slave breeding fraction. The slave breeding fraction. Does Project 1619 talk about the economic policy of the slave breeding fraction? No, they don't do that. They probably like free trade. The people who made up this Project 1619, they like free trade. They also have a horrible view of man. Next slide, Victor. Next one. Next one. Okay. On Adam Smith and the Free Trade School, all the facts collected by him are inconsistent with the maxims of free production, but they are not all consistent, nor is his reasoning all consistent with the doctrines of the maxims of free trade. The inconsistencies have been critically sought by his disciples and followers, Ricardo, McCulloch, and others in Great Britain, and by Dr. Francis Whalen, Condi Ragu, Professor Henry Vatake, ETID Omni Genius in this country, and partially so by John Baptiste Say, and they have carefully excluded from their world all inconsistencies and made them conform strictly to all the abstract rules and assumptions of free trade. Okay. All right. So what are the inconsistencies of free trade? Yes, free trade has inconsistencies. And Ezra Seaman is saying the dismal science is covering up the inconsistencies where Adam Smith actually makes sense. Because of time constraint, I'm only going to mention one. And that one, in The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith said, domestic commerce is better than foreign commerce because domestic commerce stimulates domestic industries. Who rebuked Adam Smith for saying this? David Ricardo, the most evil 19th century economist of them all. He rebuked Adam Smith for saying this. He's saying it's not about domestic commerce. It's about comparative advantage. It's about buying in the cheapest market. You don't want a nation state. You want a group of individuals that are insubordinate. You don't want to develop a complete economy, because if you develop a complete economy, it's going to be independent of the British. And the British didn't want the United States of America to have an independent economy, because if the United States of America had an independent economy, the British would lose their biggest market. right? Yes, the British biggest market was the United States of America. And take a look at the next slide. Victor, next slide, please. Friends of free trade advice to the United States. They don't want to implement the report on manufacturing. Great Britain has the natural resources and could soon acquire the capacity to manufacture for the world. The natural resources of the United States for mining and manufacturing are perhaps still greater, and they have also a territory sufficiently large and fertile to supply provisions for a population of 500 or 600 millions. The friends of free trade say we may better confine ourselves mostly to agriculture and depend on selling our agriculture produce more than we can sell and for years of not only our own but all foreign markets are sure fitted with agricultural products of almost every description. So this is a very powerful quote, right? So Ezra Seaman is acknowledging that the British wants to be the workshop of the world, and they can be the workshop of the world. Hmm. If England wants to be the workshop of the world, we can't associate that with monopoly, because only countries devoted towards protectionism creates monopolies. The British never had the intent on creating a monopoly. They just wanted to do good by other nations, right? And the United States of America says, Ezra Seaman said something. He says we have provisions for a population for 500 to 600 millions. Think of the domestic commerce that you're going to have if the United States of America had 500 or 600 millions. Think of the development. Think of the manufacturers. Think of how the farmer's going to have a market if there were 600 million people in the United States of America. Ezra Seaman is saying in 1846, the potential relative population density of the United States of America should be 500 million or 600 million. That is big time. That is so big time, right? And then we have the Friends of Free Trade who are not Hamiltonians. They're saying go with agriculture, right? But hold on. The only thing that the British want to buy from other countries is agricultural goods. So if you are competing with countries in Europe, countries in Ibero-America, Russia, India, who's going to get the British market for agriculture? The British is a small island. How can how can they consume all those agricultural goods? They can't they can't do it. It is impossible. But the free trade school never says that, right? And they play upon this so many times. You don't need to have an agro-industrial economy. Don't be concerned about developing manufacturers. Buy in the cheapest market and produce what you can produce best. You have the best soils for agriculture, right? That is going to destroy the nation state. It's going to destroy the report on manufacturing. And Ezra Seaman's whole idea the around his book is to defend the report on manufacturing, right? Because what Ezra Seaman is talking about, you can't separate it from the report on manufacturing. You can't separate it from the writings of List and Henry Carey. You just can't do that. They're the same. They're on the same team. And the free trade school doesn't want you to know about Ezra Seaman. They knew that Ezra Seaman wrote a book on political economy, and they don't even want to mention it in Wikipedia. They just say, yeah, he wrote a book, but we don't know anything about it. I know about the book. And I wrote an entry on Wikipedia. It's still up there. It's calling Ezra Seaman a protectionist. If I didn't write that, the post on Ezra Seaman will be bare as a skeleton. Oh, he worked for the government. He lived in Michigan. He lived in Washington, D.C. They don't even want to talk about the fact that he's a protectionist. If he was a free trader, they would have mentioned that he was a free trader. If he was a lawyer for the New England banking establishment, they would have mentioned that. But because he was a protectionist, they didn't want to mention that, right? And that's a big issue, because the only way we are going to get the report on manufacturing to be taken seriously in the United States of America and in the world is that we have to sever this relationship between the British. Once we sever the relationship between the British, we are going to have better historians. We're going to have better economists. We're going to have better statesmen. We're going to have better scientists. We're going to have better people overall. We're not going to have a society that wants to buy cheap and sell dear. And that's the end of the presentation, Victor.
Thank you, Neil. That was quite a tour de force, Neil. You all heard it from Neil Martin, the world leading authority on American system, 19th century American system political economy. Just want to give a preview, or I want to give Neil an opportunity to give us a preview of what he's thinking about for our next episode coming up, hopefully about a month from today, or right about. Neil, you want to give us?
Well, the next presentation will either be about George B. Dixwell, who was a economist in the 1880s. We also might have John Lord Hayes. John Lord Hayes was the second best political economist of the post-Civil War era. Or we might have a presentation on Henry Carey. I just need to decide what I'm going to do.
That will be awesome. Some of the work I've been doing is to try to disaggregate what the core themes that Carey covers in Principles of Social Science, because the work is so dense. And I think I've kind of isolated. Have you ever tried to wrap your head around his idea of the law of distribution?
I mainly focused on commerce, refuting the British Empire, view of man, and organizing an economy. Those are the things that I those are the things that I can those are the things that I concentrated on.
Sounds good.
I might have looked at the distribution, but I didn't pay attention to it, or it's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of Henry Carey to cover. It's a 3-volume book. There's this remember I did a whole presentation on chapter 2 of the Principles of Social Science, volume 1, chapter 2.
Which is what was that chapter?
Chapter 2 on man.
On the subject.
It starts out with man is the molecule of society.
Yep, I remember that. Yep. So there's a lot to unravel. Like I said, book club coming. We just got a preview. A star-studded presentation. Lord B. Hayes. A few other names. So it's going to be same channel. the 19th Century American System podcast. Signing off. Sayonara. Have a good night, fellas. I'll call you right back now.
Okay.
Actually, maybe I should end the recording. And then you and I can stay.